Thank you, Ms. Shelikins, for your comprehensive remarks and for bringing expertise to this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time now to begin discussion under item number 2 of our agenda, entitled Inclusive Education to Empower Minority Youth. The speaking time limit will be 5 minutes per panelists and 2 minutes for the participants who the moderator will give the floor. It's my pleasure now to welcome the panelists. Ms. Noha Jreen, Ms. Noha Jreen is the president of the Amazigh Culture Club. She works at the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports in Tunisia and has extensive experience in the field of informal education for youth. Dr. Elzbieta Kuzborska, a former senior minorities fellow at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva in 2014. She is a board member at the Association of Polish Academics in Lithuania. Ms. Woo-Ki Park Kim, a lecturer at the Korean University in Tokyo and the secretary for the Human Rights Association for Korean residents in Japan. And the moderator, Ms. Saskia Shelikins, the special advisor to the UN Special Envoy on Youth. She will moderate the first panel. I can see some hands are raised. Yes. Hold on. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we will start the panel discussion. We will give 5 minutes to the panelists, and then we will give the floor, the opportunity. Those who have nameplates should raise their nameplate after the moderator finishes the debate, and those who do not have nameplates, just please raise your hands, and the colleagues will come around, register your name, bring it to the moderator, and the moderator will give you the opportunity to make your comments. So, okay, we will take care of taking the names, and they are registering your names. But please put your hands down. Let's start the debate. After the debate finishes, then we will collect the names and we will give you the opportunities to make your contribution to the discussion. Thank you. May I now give the floor to the first panelist, Ms. Noha Jreen, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. مرحبا بكم جميعا. أقولها بلغتي الأم الزول.
A very good morning.
بلغتي الأم وهي اللغة الأمازيغية. في البداية أود أن أعرف بمن هم.
First and foremost, I would like to present the Amazigh people. They are the indigenous people in North Africa, and they make up a majority in Tunisia. However, the number of Amazigh people has gone down in the light of various policies. We need to speak about the fundamental role of the system, which is predominantly negative in the formal and informal sectors. The identity of others must be respected. And there are some issues that I would like to broach now as I introduce this subject. The Amazigh cultures need to be brought in to official education curricula to respect the role of young people as those who build the future. Young people have the right to learn in their mother tongue and to learn the history of their country. So we speak here about union in diversity and the right to diversity when it comes to managing differences in the context of an overall education system to foster peaceful coexistence and tolerance. After the revolution in 2001-2012, the voice of the Amazigh people has been heard, and many associations have been set up to focus on Amazigh culture and also the cultural rights of these people. These associations take part in the education system through activities that they organize in cooperation with educational activities both in the formal and informal sectors. They therefore provide education through clubs and through the publication of various books, and they also organize activities to disseminate information about Amazigh history and culture. However, these associations don't have enough financial and academic and research means at the moment, and that is why we need the state of Tunisia to get involved more to protect the language of this indigenous group and to protect their rights to culture, and therefore we need to have policies that respect differences and which ensure that they protect citizens' rights from a very young age. The Amazigh language has been acknowledged and recognized by the government through communications that have been seen, and this has led to the organization of celebrations, and the Human Rights Ministry has indeed recently published a communication which congratulates the Amazigh people at the beginning of the new Amazigh year. And indeed the Supreme Council of Youth has also opened up to the participation of Amazigh youth. This is a rather modest initiative, and until it really fully recognizes the Amazigh language and culture.
Invite Dr. Elżbieta Kuzborska. You have the floor, and you have 5 minutes with the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, excellencies, representatives of civil society, for me it is a great honor and privilege to share with you my experience and insights concerning the importance of the right to education in a minority language. The experience concerning primary and secondary education in mother tongue is relevant to the experience and background of most of the members of Polish minority in Lithuania. Most of my life I have lived in Lithuania. My parents are Polish, and I was raised in mainly Polish environment speaking Polish language. In short, the educational system of minorities in Lithuania for decades was oriented in favor of teaching in minority language. All subjects were taught in minority language, mostly Polish and Russian, languages of the largest minorities in the country. And the official language was taught as a separate subject. I was educated in that system, and for several years I was working in one of the Lithuanian state offices, which proves my command of official language after graduating from minority school was perfect. I am a big fan of teaching minority language and in minority language to the most extent it is possible. Introducing the teaching of the official language in minority schools step by step gives good results and empowers children. I would also like to share with you my academical practice teaching in minority language. For a number of years, I was a lecturer at the branch of Białystok University in Vilnius in Lithuania, educating members of Polish minority in their mother tongue. Vast majority of graduates of the Vilnius branch take up job in Lithuania and is successful on the labor market. This proves that educating in mother tongue, even at tertiary level, gives positive results and empowers members of minority. I need to emphasize that all the graduates of the branch perfectly command the official language. My message is what my example and experience prove. The education in mother tongue of children leads to encouragement, strength and enthusiasm, and greater academic success. The scientific basis for this is measurable and observable in all parts of the world, and goes to the very heart of inclusion and effective participation in society, especially for national minorities. Here, I would like to make 3 main points of my presentation. First, let me say clearly that minority education involves human rights, including in relation to the language of education. Legal obligations in Europe in relation to the educational rights of minorities are very strong and must be respected, though there seems to be a tendency of some states to turn a blind eye on this, especially in relation to less popular minorities. Second, minority education that is culturally appropriate, including where possible in a national minority's own language, produces good academic results. And thirdly, national minorities integrate best when they are taught in their own languages, as much as it is possible. Studies by the World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF, in different parts of the world confirm that the proportionate use of the language of minorities in education combined with quality teaching of the official language is more cost-effective in the long term, reduces dropout and repetition rates, leads to noticeably better academic results, particularly for girls, improves the level of literacy and fluency in both mother tongue and the official or majority language, and leads to greater family and community involvement and support. The evidence is clear. Children taught in their own language do better in school and stay there longer, giving them a stronger basis in order to learn official and other languages. Language is a key to inclusion. Language is the center of human activity, self-expression and identity, recognizes the primary importance that people place on their own language, fosters the kind of true participation in development that achieves long-lasting results. My recommendation would be to strongly link the human rights with the right to be educated in one's own minority language, as much as it is reasonably possible, and this can go up even to university education, where you can especially have large and concentrated minorities. Thus, it is crucial to promote mother tongue education for minorities among stakeholders, politicians and officials, inter alia, to present advantages of minority education as an effective tool of integration within society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuzborska. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Woo-Ki Park Kim for 5 more minutes as well. Thank you.
For having me at this forum. I am a Korean minority rights activist born in Japan, and I work in the NGO Human Rights Association for Korean Residents in Japan. And Korean residents in Japan are Koreans who are forced to live in Japan during Japan's colonial rule over Korea from 1910 to 1945, and their descendants. So I am a 3rd generation of Korean residents in Japan. And it's estimated that approximately 1 million ethnic Koreans live in Japan. So I would like to talk about 3 things. The first, the major challenge for Korean youth with respect to access to education, teaching in the mother tongue, which I call Korean schools. And the second is the good practices to overcome these challenges. And thirdly, I would like to suggest some recommendations. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So, and the major obstacles is the fact that the number of Korean schools has been decreasing due to the discrimination by the Japanese government. And Korean schools were created by ethnic Koreans in order to preserve their ethnic identity and enable the young generations to be familiar with their own language, culture, and history right after the liberation from Japan's colonial rule. So as of 1947, more than 60,000 children attended 548 Korean schools. However, the number has decreased 6,000 children in 66 schools today. And the major discrimination against, next slide please, and the major discrimination against Korean schools is the lack of recognition by the Japanese government in spite of the fact that the curriculums of the Korean schools are equivalent to that of Japanese ones. And so there has been no financial support from the central government and no automatic eligibility to take Japanese university entrance exams, as is the case for students with a diploma issued by majority of other foreign schools. So the Special Rapporteur on Racism recommended that the Japanese government should adopt all measures required to eliminate differential treatment between Korean schools and other foreign schools in 2006. What is worse, the Japanese government has been excluding only Korean high school students from the High School Tuition Support Fund program. And while the Japanese government has provided funding to other foreign school students, the government has given no funds to only Korean high school students because the government said that there was a political conflict between Japan and DPR Korea, with which Korean school students have nothing to do. So far, more than 10,000 Korean school students were excluded from this program, and it is estimated over the total damage is estimated over $14 million. So this puts a very heavy burden on the parents of Korean schools. So many of them have no choice but to send their children to Japanese public schools where no ethnic minority education for Korean minority is given. So next slide, please. So against this backdrop, Korean youth are sacrificing their time to study and enjoy their youth. For example, more than 200 Korean students have filed lawsuits against the Japanese government to protest the exclusion from the Tuition Support Fund program. And the protest rally is held every Friday in front of the Ministry of Education, protesting the exclusion from the program. And this Friday action has become the platform for not only Korean but also Japanese people to get together and forge their solidarity. Next slide, please. And in 2013, a 20-year-old graduate of Korean school attended the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination's review on Japan to make her voice heard. So this is what she said at NGO briefing. Thanks to the education I had in a Korean school, I could learn Korean language, which my grandfather could not learn. Korean school is a precious place where Koreans can learn their own language, culture, and history with friends who have the same root. I do not want to let my juniors suffer from such discrimination anymore. So after the review, the committee recommended that the Japanese government should revise its position and to allow Korean schools to benefit as appropriate from the High School Tuition Support Fund. However, the government has failed to implement this recommendation, saying its act is not discrimination. Next slide, please. But Korean school students have been making great efforts promoting mutual understanding with Japanese society. One of the good practices is a joint art project held by students of Korea University in Tokyo and Musashino Art University. These two students have been standing adjacent to each other but separated by a single layer of a fence. And there had been no communication for more than a half century. But students decided to build a bridge over the fence between the two schools and held art exhibitions at each other's university. And Korean school students have been also holding many open campus days where local residents are invited to observe the classes and enjoy the school festivals. So now Korean school students have been already acting as a communication bridge between Japanese and Korean communities. So, and I strongly believe that the society will become more diverse and inclusive when the education for minorities are fully ensured. Because of the time limitation, please see the slide. It's my suggested recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park Kim. Thank you for the panelists. Now I invite Ms. Shelikan, the moderator of this session, to moderate and to open the floor. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And also thank you, panelists, for your expert contributions and for sharing your diverse experiences, insights, and recommendations with regards to addressing the challenges how we address the challenges and leverage the opportunities to advance inclusive education for the empowerment of youth minorities. It's a real privilege to share this stage with such an amazing set of speakers, and an honor for me to moderate this first thematic session of the forum. As all of you are well aware, education is an alienable human right and is more than just a mere service or a commodity. And education is also a human right that is crucial to the realization of many other human rights and indispensable for the expansion of human capabilities and the enhancement of human dignity. Education plays a formative role in the socialization for democratic citizenship and represents an essential support for the development and maintenance of community identity. And it's also a primary means by which individuals and communities can sustainably lift themselves out of poverty, and a means of helping minorities overcome the legacies of historical injustices or discrimination committed against them. The right to education is, however, to date and in practice not enjoyed equally by all, and minorities in various regions of the world suffer disproportionately from unequal and restricted access to quality education and inappropriate and sometimes ineffective education strategies. So as some of you may recall, the very first forum on minority issues actually focused on the issue of education and came out with a set of concrete recommendations based on core principles that focused on 4 key areas. And I just would like to remind you of those areas and hope that we can reflect on them as we start a discussion here in the room. These related to essential requirements for effective education strategies, including the establishment of legal and policy frameworks as well as budgetary allocations. 2 recommendations were provided with regards to equal access for education of minorities, ensuring realistic and viable access, including also taking into account issues of physical barriers, etc. The third set of recommendations was with regards to the establishment of a conducive learning environment that promotes mutual understanding, respect and trust, including human rights education and the sensitization of teachers. And then the fourth main area of the set of recommendations that came out of the 2008 Forum on Minority Issues that focused on education had to do with the content and delivery of curriculum. So we have heard from the panelists and their experiences now 9 years on since that first forum, and also their experiences with regards to both formal and informal education. But it may be the case that a lot of the recommendations that were provided 9 years ago are still very valid for us today and still need further attention to ensure their full and effective implementation. So with this, I would like to open the floor and invite those of you who wish to take the floor to indicate your interest, as was said, by raising your nameplates. Colleagues will be moving around the floor also in case you are not seated with a nameplate. And I will invite all speakers to kindly identify themselves and also, to the extent possible, to address the topic of this particular session, as said, inclusive education to empower minority youth. As was mentioned by the chair previously, we would like you to concentrate on providing the concrete stories of you as stakeholders with regards to what measures and initiatives have been taken to address the issues of inclusive education for minority youth, and focus on challenges that have been overcome as well as good practices and lessons learned. So with this being said, I would like to invite the distinguished delegate of Georgia to take the floor. Representative, the floor is yours.
Madam Moderator, distinguished delegates, it's my honor to address the 10th session of the United Nations Forum on Minority Issues, as Georgia's first youth delegate to the United Nations with ethnic minority background. At the outset, I would like to thank the United Nations and the government of Georgia for their continuous efforts to empower minorities, including minority youth. A comprehensive solution to empower minorities and not to leave them behind the Sustainable Development Agenda is strategic investments in education of the minority youth, who represent a building block for more integrated, equal and inclusive societies. Georgia is a multi-ethnic country where every single citizen, regardless of their ethnic background, is a source of strength to our country, so they are at the center of the policy of the government of Georgia. Diversity represents a valuable asset for Georgia and a resource for a democratic and stable development of the country. Alongside with the dominant ethnic group, Georgians, representatives of different ethnic groups have played a significant role in a country's development throughout various stages of history. Improving access to quality education by providing high-quality preschool, general, vocational and higher education, as well as the acquisition of increasing state language knowledge among minority youth are priority objectives for Georgia. And the state strategy for civic equality and integration and action plan for 2015-2020 emphasize a number of measures to fulfill these objectives. Since 2010, representatives of ethnic minorities have an opportunity to receive higher education according to the preferential policy, also referred Program 1+4, which indicates and examines general skills in Abkhazian, Ossetian, Armenian and Azeri languages, have made a significant contribution to the improvement access to high-quality education for minorities, as the number of such students has increased significantly and reached more than 600. Respectively, the policy will be continued. Despite significant efforts and investments, the quality of education remains a challenge in the rural areas, including non-Georgian language schools, which are in need of improvement, the quality of textbooks and further professional enhancing of teachers' qualification. It's essential to ensure that teachers and students know the official state language, but it's also equally important to preserve native languages. To go further towards an inclusive and diverse society, we need textbooks that adequately reflect the diversity of Georgia. In conclusion, I would like to once again stress my government's commitment to ensure the high-quality education at all levels for every citizen of Georgia, diverse society of Georgia. We are mindful that it's a complex task and stand ready to move forward. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Georgia. It's really great to see that we have official EU delegates in the room. I would now like to give the floor to the delegate of Sudan. Please, the floor.
بسم الله والابن والروح القدس لله الواحد آمين. لكم التحية إخوتي الكرام المؤتمرين.
Thank you. I greet you all. Good morning, Chairman. I would like to extend the greetings to you from the Sudanese delegation on this important day, following the separation between Sudan and South Sudan. Since then, Sudan has been paying particular attention to minorities along the Blue River, and I come from Kordofan in Nuba. I'm Christian and I represent Sudan this morning. Indeed, the Sudanese statement shows that there is common ground between all of us, that is to say education for all, education indeed that contributes to building societies, particularly supporting minorities. Indeed, there is a cure for every illness, and here this cure is education and teaching. Illiteracy, in students face difficulty writing and speaking, but there's another type of illiteracy which is shown by terrorism and selfishness of some. There is also a further type of illiteracy on an economic level, as poverty faced by many, and a cultural form of illiteracy. And we know that globalization has many negative consequences. where some people exploit this to their own gain. So, we do need to ensure access to education, and we need to carry out scientific research, certainly. And thanks to current technologies, I would recommend to the international community and the international and to the United Nations to support the ethnicities across the world and support these minorities, and they are called upon to contribute to education so that we can have a far-reaching global thinking on this issue. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Sudan, and I will now turn the floor to ELEN, European Language Equality Network. Please, the floor is yours.
Bonjour.
Good morning. We're speaking on behalf of the European Language Network, and we come from France. We promote human rights, and we have status to do so, and sometimes the existence of minorities is denied, particularly linguistic rights are denied. When the state grants a right, they make them inoperable. In Brittany, we had a child born in May, and the state refused to put the tilde on top of the letter in their name, saying they do not have a right to use their name used in the Breton language. And this this undermined national unity. This was written in a judgment from the state. And we have a college student who's studying in Breton language, cannot pass exams or take exams in Breton. And this week we learned that in Alsace, teaching, immersion teaching, which is entirely in regional languages, is about to be suspended by the Alsace region. In Brittany, we have created schools which have a system in minority languages, but there are hindrances again and again to set up these schools. We have had a crisis in September when the state stopped financial support for these schools and for employment in these schools. When we think about the proposals we could make, we would like to see to be able to drive these things forward. We would like local people to be aware of their rights and to know that linguistic rights are part of human rights. This would be progress. France ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but they refused to ratify Article 30, which indeed pertains to minorities. We would also like to spread awareness of tools such as the Practical Guide for Linguistic Rights, which was published by the Special Rapporteur in May 2017. And we hope that France, or the Special Rapporteur rather, will make a report on France, as was done a few years ago, because the non-recognition of linguistic minorities is also covers the problems faced by migrants, by Roma people as well, and so this is a far-reaching problem. And the statement made by the Korean delegate living in Japan is very relevant for us in France. One last thing, we would like UNESCO to pick up its work again on linguistic diversity. I thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the European Language Equality Network for her statement. I would now like to turn the floor to the representative of Iraq.
Thank you very much, Chair. I welcome the convening of this conference, and I would like to welcome Mr. Varenne, who recently was appointed Special Rapporteur on minority issues. And we wish him every success in his mandate. This forum is an opportunity to recall to the world the drama and crisis suffered by Iraqi minorities, particularly with the presence of Islamic State, which has committed atrocities, violated human rights in Mosul. Iraq is currently prosecuting the perpetrators of these crimes, and they will cooperate fully with the international teams under Resolution 2379 from 2017 from the Security Council. Indeed, young people have been particularly targeted by these terrorist groups, and this is tantamount to genocide, according to the Iraqi government. We would like to thank the Special Envoy of the Secretary General for you, young people, who carried out a visit to Iraq in June 2017. She sent a message of support of the United Nations to Iraqi youth. They should also guarantee the rights of minorities and also guarantee representation of minorities in municipalities and in local councils. The law from 2012 sets out for the organization of groups which are Yazidi Christians to support them and others to guarantee the right to education for them. The Iraqi government furthermore has adopted a strategy for education for the period 2012-2022. This in close collaboration with international organizations, UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Bank. And the aim here is to set up an education system which provides opportunities for education to all, to meet the needs of society, and then build a society and ensure good governance and democracy. We have also implemented policies to tackle illiteracy, to guarantee furthermore the use of mother tongues of minorities. Minorities also have the right to assemble and create organizations, associations under the Iraqi constitution. We also provide the means to create parties to represent minorities and also disseminate information and raise awareness of their cultural rights as well as political rights. Without restriction, they have the right to work in the media and the digital media as well. This is also open to minorities. There is no restriction or constraints here. Minority youth can participate in the fight against Islamic State, and young people are the most affected indeed. And they have the most influence also. These youth have spared no effort to prevent conflict in this region, and they have greatly contributed to the resolution 1325 from the Security Council to protect the rights of women and ensure their participation. I thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Iraq and also wish to assure the representative that the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth very much enjoyed her mission to his country. It was the first ever mission that the Envoy on Youth undertook in her new capacity, and she greatly enjoyed the opportunity to engage with all stakeholders, and in particular her engagements with young Iraqis on the ground. Thank you. I would like to move now to the Ukrainian Institute for the Analysis and Management of Policy. A representative of the Ukrainian Institute, you have the floor.
Good morning, colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to speak here before you all. Ukraine is a multi-ethnic and multicultural country where more than 100 ethnicities live, and we had a census from 2001, and there are many as a high representative of minorities, 22%, and 1 in 3 Ukrainians believes that their mother tongue is one of a national minority. A large number of people are Russian, and there's Crimean Tatars as well. Many representatives. The situation is such that Ukrainian institutions formally enshrine the use of a mother tongue in education. At the same time, from the period from up to 2017, the number of those studying Romanian has halved almost. Hungarian has fallen by 20%, Moldovan has halved, and Russian by 3.5 times. However, today, national minority languages are being studied by more than 400,000 children. At the same time, they study Ukrainian, which is a state subject. Higher education ensures that there's only used in private institutions, and they do not restrict linguistic minorities. We adopted a new law on education in September 2017, which means that only in primary education they have, national minority languages. And from 5th grade, they teach in minority languages, and this has all been almost eradicated completely. This is now mainly Ukrainian-only languages, both in private and public educations. They can only some subjects are taught in other languages, and later this will not be possible at all. However, we are convinced that to develop the state language, they should not undermine the rights of national minorities to study in their own language. This means that we can achieve a compromise, of course. Here, the Ukrainian government should be able to support teaching in foreign languages without undermining the opportunities for national minorities. But it's a politicized issue, and there is no dialogue undertaken between the government and specialized agencies on this issue. Such a dialogue means that there are problems raised at international organizations and with the international community here. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the last speaker for his statement, and I would like to turn the floor now to the Awas HR organization. You have the floor. Do we have the representative of Awas Human Rights Organization in the room?
Thank you, Chair. Moderator. I would like to speak about the situation of minorities and education in Iran. Iran is multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multilingual. However, minorities suffer from injustice and discrimination, particularly in terms of education, where one single language is allowed by the state, which is Persian. The curriculum covers culture, but Kurds, Turkmens, for example, and other groups are ignored. Indeed, there is hate speech against minorities, particularly Muslims, Sunni Muslims, and others, imposing Persian on Arabic speakers in primary schools, prohibits children from studying in their mother tongue, and this affects their lives. They are unable to continue in their studies. And they've also increased school fees, and also 30% of children who are in education, on primary education, leave school. Here we're talking about Arabic publications which are banned. Magazines and journals are banned, as well as newspapers, and other communities have launched a campaign online to ask them to ensure that children can study in their mother tongue. Bearing in mind that Article 15 of the Constitution sets forth the right to study in Persian and in minority languages. The Revolutionary Tribunal condemned sentenced 2 people to 4 years in prison. They had decided to teach in Arabic and in Amazigh as well. Despite Resolution 2030 from UNESCO, which guarantees and provides opportunities to education for all in minority languages, despite this, the government refused to ratify this resolution. And Persian is the only language that is available for teaching. Curricula, Chair, contain hate speech, particularly against Sunni. And this is nothing new. This goes back many years. Indeed, we are convincing people that Arabic is a barbaric language. The President.
I'm extremely sorry, but we certainly need to remain within the time limit because there is a large number of colleagues here in this room would like to also share their comments and their views. So please, I appeal to every participant in this room to stick to the 2 minutes time frame. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
We thank the representative of the Awas Human Rights Organization for his statement, and I would like to now invite the Latvian Human Rights Committee representative to provide a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Latvian Human Rights Committee has an experience with the society where 38% of the population belong to linguistic minorities, mostly the Russian-speaking minority. Nevertheless, this October, the ruling coalition, without any consultation with the minorities affected, has announced its plan to switch all education in public minority schools, it is in grades 10 to 12, to Latvian language of instruction only, except mother tongue lessons and lessons of ethno-cultural subjects. Despite that we have an experience of bilingual education, with much success also in teaching Latvian language, which is obviously a justified priority. Based on this experience, we are suggesting to include in the final document of the forum the position that the existence of minority language of instruction schools should be interpreted as an asset, not segregation, as it is much talked in political discourse in Latvia. And social cohesion and integration should not be used as pretext for denying education in mother tongue. Moreover, the option of exams in mother tongue for minority schools should be promoted as a reasonable accommodation for minorities and not presented as discrimination. The same way, in official language exams, differentiated requirements for graduates of official language only schools and of bilingual schools or schools with minority language of instruction should be promoted also as reasonable accommodation and not presented as discrimination. Finally, in areas populated by national minorities, teaching of their language also to majority population should be encouraged and not seen as a deficiency. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Latvian Human Rights Committee and in particular also for making very concrete recommendations that may be considered for featuring in the outcome of this forum. I would like to now invite the Swedish Institute to provide the statement.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Special Rapporteur, and distinguished delegates for the great inspiration. My name is Jack Jendo. I'm from Beirut, Lebanon, and I belong to the Assyrian indigenous people of Mesopotamia, coming with the Swedish Institute of Alexandria. I rely on the youth influencing for peacemaking and ecumenical activity in the Middle East, in addition of being a digital media and business intelligence expert. The Middle East, without its minorities, would be much more dangerous than it is. From my historical experience with sequential genocides and ethnic religious cleansing of my people, I can tell that it's just a matter of time and the minorities will be in diaspora. And of course, it won't be a diaspora anymore. It is not an easy situation, but for youth, nothing is impossible. To respect time, I'll go directly to the basic issues and some innovative and attainable recommendations with hope and love to make the first step of change. The issues: 1. The limited access to education is weakening the power of new generations to develop and improve their environment. It is pointing their ambitions to diaspora. 2. A curriculum that spreads hate on different religious, social and cultural levels instead of delivering positive knowledge could be almost the main reason behind wars. My recommendations: in a world of technology and digital media, we have a big opportunity to move toward digital transformation in education and make it available to anyone without limitation, and especially minorities with limited resources and space. Knowledge is the key. Let's use it. It would be a smart and nice approach, the second recommendation, for any of the governments in the Middle East to replace the minority label by the group name itself. In addition, start teaching their history, language, and culture in the education curriculums. With all my love and hope to make a good follow-up on this forum, precious recommendations from all over the world, and thank you.
I thank the representative of the Swedish Institute and now call upon the representative of Azerbaijan to please take the floor.
Is one of a few states in the world in which multiculturalism is a state policy. Azerbaijan's approach to protection of persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities within the scope of its multiculturalism policy. Therefore, protection of national minorities, their ethnic cultural values is a priority for the state. Article 21 of the Constitution of Azerbaijan says, Azerbaijan Republic ensures free use of and development of other languages spoken by the people. Article 45 of the Constitution says that everyone has the right to use his/her mother tongue, everyone has the right to be educated, carry out creative activity in any language he desires. Nobody may be deprived of rights to use his/her mother tongue. Furthermore, pursuant to the 6th article of the Law of the Republic of Azerbaijan on Education, Azerbaijani language is a state language. However, in special cases, the process of education in school can be in other languages within the condition of some mandatory subjects. In accordance with the noted articles of the Constitution and the Law on Education, the Azerbaijani government has created for minorities appropriate and adequate opportunities to learn their mother tongue, to get education in their native languages. Here are some statistics related to schools in languages of national minorities. There are about 300 comprehensive Russian schools, 10 Georgian schools, 1 Hebrew school, in Lezgin language there are above 100 schools. In Talysh language there are 225 schools. In Avar, 22. In Sahur, 5 schools. In Udi language, 3 schools. In Kurdish, 2 schools, and 1 in Khanalik language. Thus, in 367 schools, about 35,000 people belonging to national minorities learn their native language. Teaching methodology of national minority language for primary school children is included in the curriculum of colleges that function in regions densely populated by national minorities to meet demands for national minority teachers. The government cares also to provide schools with teaching materials in languages of national minorities. As we see, the Azerbaijani government created necessary opportunities for national minorities to get education in their native language, which is in its turn leads to their integration into society and promotes their active participation in public life. Thank you for your attention.
I thank you for that rapid conclusion, distinguished representative of Azerbaijan. I also wish to remind everyone in the room that not only is this dialogue offering an opportunity for presenting your statements, but also it offers an opportunity to raise any questions you may have for our experts in the panel. I wish to now call on the Copts European Association to please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On behalf of our organization in Europe and Switzerland, I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, for choosing this topic for this meeting. In Egypt, we are suffering because the Azhar University only accepts Muslims, even though in society there are Muslims and Christians. The Al-Azhar University has sent out terrorists, and many terrorist groups unfortunately studied at this particular university. The Christian Copts do not accept to be a part of this university. The Egyptian government bans them access to this university, in fact, and the budget of the university is in fact allocated by Egyptian taxpayers. Education is not limited to school programs, but there are also Sunday schools available where teaching is given by churches. 52 churches in Egypt provide teaching in this way. They provide teaching in tolerance, and this is the only source of education in some rural areas in Egypt, and that is why we would call on the government to close the Al-Azhar University and to set up schools in rural areas so as to provide teaching for Christians.
The distinguished delegate of Egypt asked for point of order. So we will move to the distinguished delegate of Egypt. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to this assembly, and also with all due respect to the important role played by civil society in the domain of human rights, and with our full conviction that they need to be given a full voice in a forum such as this, and with also our belief that it is necessary for civil society to take part in our meetings, we are obliged to ask the representative of this civil society organization to respect appropriate and dignified language in this forum. That is why I would ask you, Chairman, to recall to speakers that they need to adhere to the rules adopted within the UN and not to launch accusations against religious organizations that are recognized worldwide, and not to impugn the reputation of these bodies. We are here within a forum, we're engaging in a dialogue, we're speaking about young people and minorities here, and so I think we should only deal with these issues rather than other ones. Thank you.
Thank you, the distinguished delegate of Egypt. Is there any distinguished delegate of any state would like to take the floor for point of order in the same subject? If not, I would like to, before we go back to the speaker, I would like to strongly encourage all participants to show respect for others' views while inviting participants to exercise decorum and please avoid abusive or disrespectful language or derogatory and inflammatory remarks. It's important that this forum continues as an inclusive rather than an exclusive. Back to you, Mr. Speaker, with a request to not to use abusive language. Thank you.
Chairman, I am speaking in a very respectful way. However, this person I mentioned was this person from the university, from the Al-Azhar University, was executed, and the fact that terrorists have studied at Al-Azhar University is a fact, and it's not an accusation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the statement. I wish to now move to the distinguished representative of Romanipi. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Defina Savage, representative of Romanipe, a non-for-profit organization based in Montreal, Canada, seeking to address the ongoing human rights abuses faced by Romani communities across the world, including in Canada. Roma continues to be one of the most persecuted group of people in Europe. One of the issues that Roma have faced, among one of the issues that Roma continue to face, is the issues of lack of access to education for reasons often of racism, exclusion, and in many countries such as Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, we see that Roma continue to be disproportionately placed in segregated schools despite proper testing being carried. So our recommendation is to stop the segregation of Romani children in those schools and to give Romani children equal access to education in those countries so that in the long run there could be an empowerment of Roma youth. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Romanipe for her statement, and now would like to call on the representative of Hungary to take the floor. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for historical reasons, one of the main objectives of Hungary's foreign policy is the international protection of minority rights. This forum constitutes an outstanding platform of changing views, ideas and best practices regarding the protection and promotion of the rights of national, ethnic and linguistic minorities in general, and this year minority youth in particular. Education being key to empower minority youth, allow me to use this platform today to talk about the importance of ensuring the right of persons belonging to minorities to learn their mother tongue and receive education in their mother tongue. According to the Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National, Ethnic, Religious and Linguistic Minorities adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1982, states should take appropriate measures so that, wherever possible, persons belonging to minorities may have adequate opportunities to learn their mother tongue or to have instructions in their mother tongue. Consequently, we can state that the right of national minorities to receive education in their mother tongue is a self-evident fundamental right recognized in international human rights instruments. Until now, this right has been recognized also by the laws of Ukraine and enjoyed by its national minorities. However, Article 7 of the newly adopted Ukrainian Education Act substantially limits this right for students of secondary school, grade 5 and higher, and students of higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 200,000 Hungarians live in Ukraine in the Transcarpathian region. For them, from age 10, the language of education shall be Ukrainian according to the new law. We believe the means employed by Ukraine place excessive burden on national minorities and are not proportionate to that aim pursued. Hungary recognized the role of state languages and the education of a state language as a key instrument for integration of individuals into society, enhancing the role of a state language and its education. However, under no circumstances can justify limitations on existing linguistic rights of national minorities. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, distinguished representative of Hungary. I would like to call on the representative of the London School of Economics to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam, for giving me the floor. I am Fitra Jewo, representing the Malay Muslim youth from Pattani, the southern border provinces of Thailand, where a conflict between Pattani freedom fighters and the Thai state have been ongoing. My generation has been experiencing 14 years of racial and religious discriminations and limited rights to the freedom of expression, including the rights to discuss our own histories and political views in academia and in public. I appreciate the Thai government's effort to solve the conflict, especially the continuous peace talks and also the recent decision to drop the charges against the 3 human rights defenders who reported torture allegations to the UN earlier. However, to solve the complicated conflict in Pattani, an important instrument for the long-term solution is changing the mindset of youth through education. Pattani's history as a former independent kingdom and a center of power struggle during the colonization period has been a root cause of the conflict. However, the history has neither been included or been encouraged to be discussed in the national curriculum of Thai education. Therefore, majority Thais are not well informed about the origin of this conflict, leading to a misunderstanding that Pattani people are national traitors driven by a radical Islamic ideology, which is wrong. And this leads to racial and religious discrimination towards the Malay Muslim minority until today. By this, I would like to recommend the Thai government to promote the recognition of Malay minority and their history in the national curriculum, and also to promote regional histories more broadly, including history of other ethnic minorities, to normalize pluralism and sharing culture, sharing tradition and languages that we share with our neighbors. And this will significantly foster economic cooperation within ASEAN countries in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your intervention. I would like to now call on the representative of the Russian Federation to please take the floor.
Thank you, moderator. The Russian delegation supports the second discussion of this forum of issue of minority education. Our country, which is multi-ethnic, not only ensures access to good quality general education, but through its legislation and practice guarantees teaching in native languages. We believe that ignoring or disregarding the right to choose education in a mother tongue leads to heightened social tension, conflicts, assimilation and segregation of minorities. In this connection, we continue to pay attention to the system in the education reform over the last quarter of a century in the Baltics, which has essentially led to a downgrading of the education system in the language of national minorities, often under the pretext of better integration of minorities in society. In practice, these processes are part of an assimilation policy and lead to the deterioration of the education quality as well as educational outcomes and success. It undermines competitiveness on the job market and increases unemployment, social vulnerability and marginalization. Unfortunately, discussion on this topic is more and more often becoming a double-think. When they hold forth on the importance of studying a national language, participants of the discussion prefer not to note the ongoing closing of Russian and minority schools, the dismissal of teachers from such schools on the grounds that they don't have sufficient knowledge of the national language, and also the threat to reform bilingual schools. But no one is disputing that a state language needs to be studied at a high level. However, this should not be to the detriment of one's own identity. Currently, this terrible practice has been adopted by Ukraine. One of the most recent steps taken in this sphere was, in September, the adoption of the education law, which contravenes international obligations of this country and limits the rights of national minorities to use or utilize their own mother tongues. Our wish for the forum and the special rapporteur is to pay attention to this aspect and explicitly prescribe in the recommendations that any activities of states linked to reforming the education system, including minority educational institutions, should be implemented taking into account the views of minorities and with their participation. The state should pay particular attention to potential risks that arise when education reform is carried out and draw up programs to prevent the negative consequences thereof. Thank you very much for your attention. The full text will be submitted to the Secretariat of the Forum. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement, distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation. I would now like to provide the floor to the World Uyghur Congress. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the World Uyghur Congress. ensuring that education is available in one's mother tongue in particular does not preclude effective integration into society, but of course can enrich the societies in which the people are members of. Education in one's mother tongue and a second language should not be understood as mutually exclusive, but they of course are complementary. As mentioned by the Secretary General's Envoy for Youth, the representative, multilingualism of course is a reality, and it's a reality that we must face and understand. Education also is really a gateway to the realization of a number of other rights, freedom of movement and expression, as well as to participate in cultural, social, and economic rights and economic life of the state. For example, in June of this year, a directive was issued by the Education Department of the Hotan Prefecture within the Uyghur Autonomous Region of China that includes a population of nearly 2 million Uyghurs. The directive banned the use of the Uyghur language at all education levels, from primary to secondary, beginning September 1st. The directive requires that local authorities prohibit the use of the Uyghur language in conversation and writing throughout the education system, which of course is in clear violation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as well as the ICCPR, as well as Regional Ethnic Autonomy Law of China. So we're really not talking about what's contained in these conventions that the state in question is a signatory to, but the application, the implementation of these policies. So our recommendations to the Forum: first is to reinforce the fact that the right to education in one's mother tongue remains foundational to the realization of a number of other rights, and in particular, economic rights and the right to employment. And we have to understand and acknowledge that these two rights and these rights are very much interdependent. So a question to the Special Rapporteur in the panel is could you elaborate on the relationship between these rights, and is there something that is being done within the Forum that might be dealing with this relationship? And secondly, to pay attention to the implementation of conventions relating to these, the right to education in one's mother tongue and education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, representative of the World Uyghur Congress, and also thank you for posing the very first question to our panelists. I let them reflect on this a little bit while we, in the meantime, will take one more statement, that of the Mother Ashish Association. Please, the floor is yours, and apologies for the mispronunciation. I'm sorry, is the Mother Arish Association in the room?
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity given to me to speak today. My name is Basant Kushwaha. I represent Madhesis minority group in Nepal. We Madhesis are more than 40% by population in Nepal, but there is no proper school or university in our Madhes region. Whatever educational institutions are there, these are in very pathetic condition with no proper infrastructure, no teachers, and very far from dense population. In this condition, Madhesis are not educated, and they are forced to work in Middle East and East Asian countries as laborer and construction workers. This is all because of ignorance and racial discrimination of Nepalese government to us Madhesis. Therefore, the United Nations and the international community should come forward strongly to pressurize Nepalese government to include Madhesis community in mainstream education system. Thank you for attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the statement, and I now wish to call upon the AfriForum for their statement, and then we will move to the panelists to provide some reflections on the question that was posed. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. South Africa is a country faced with many problems that can be traced back to education, including a youth unemployment figure of 67.4%. South Africa spends a large percentage of its annual budget on education, yet 80% of our public schools are dysfunctional. The OECD have found that South African pupils rank second to last of the countries evaluated in terms of proficiency in mathematics and science. This situation is the result of inter alia the misappropriation of funds, ideological interference, limited access to mother language education, and inadequately trained teachers. Such challenges impact especially harshly on minorities such as the Afrikaans-speaking community, represented by our organization AfriForum. Afrikaans is the largest Africa. It is a fully functional, high-level language. New legislation is being proposed that, if passed, will signal the end of single medium schools in any language apart from English, even though 90% of South Africans do not speak English as a mother language. Already Afrikaans schools are annually decreasing. At tertiary level, out of 26 public universities, none offer single medium Afrikaans education, and only 2 offer limited access to Afrikaans tuition. Court cases initiated by AfriForum to protect Afrikaans student language rights have to date not been a success. Hence, Afrikaans speakers have to explore and create private institutions to ensure continued mother language education at all levels at great costs. As NGO, we are trying to create a better life and future for the youth. Therefore, we help to build such institutions. We also use activism, litigation and media campaigns to oppose and to inform South Africans of the rights that they have, especially the South African youth. We thank the Forum for this opportunity to explore other matters of involvement, and a more detailed proposal has been submitted. We will also host as a side event to share more information with the delegates. We look forward to engaging with any NGOs active in the fields that we are focusing on, and we thank you.
I thank the speaker from the AfriForum, and as mentioned, I would like to now turn to our panelists to respond to the question that was raised regarding the interlinkages between the right to education and other human rights, especially in the sphere of economic and social development. Elisabetta, you are ready to take the floor,
yes,
I see.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes,
I would like to reflect the question concerning the connection between the right of education with political, economic and other rights. This link is, of course, very close, and as my experience shows, well-educated minorities do very well on the labor market. They have all tools to actively and fully participate in political and social life of their countries. And as I was saying before, language is the key to inclusion, and from my experience it is very crucial to use minority language as a medium of instruction for at least the first 6-8 years to get those results of inclusiveness and full participation of minorities. Thank you.
Thanks for that reflection, Elisabeth. I think it really shows that that with the right attention and appropriate education strategies in place, that actually the instruction in your mother tongue can be actually a very beneficial experience and actually help to make the transition of young minority youth from educational systems into the labor markets. I am looking at my other panelists to see if they wish to respond as well, or the special rapporteur perhaps. Yes, please go ahead, of course.
Thank you very much. I will make a few comments on the issue as to how or if we are considering the importance of education in one's mother language. The answer is yes. First of all, we have, with this session, in fact, brought up the issue during the forum of the importance of education in the language of a minority as much as is possible and reasonably practicable. Dr. Kuzbarska has just mentioned that also. I remind you that one of the priorities of my mandate is the issue of education in minorities, and particularly the issue of language, education in language of the minority. So because this is one of the thematic priorities of my mandate, we and I as Special Rapporteur will be exploring and dealing with this much more closely, and hopefully highlighting the importance of education in one's own language. This eventually will appear in an upcoming report where we look at this issue much more closely, and we seek to provide clarification, better understanding, and then some more indications as to how to implement that, how to put it in practice. And once again, this brings up the issue of the importance of education in one's own language for minorities. As was indicated by Dr. Kuzbarska, being educated in a minority language is not isolation, because minorities must always at the same time have an opportunity to learn effectively the majority language. They are acquiring ability in 2 languages. That's not a handicap. That's not a bad development. That's actually quite good to be able to be fluent in more than 1 language. Your own language and the majority language, and maybe a 3rd or 4th, or even in some cases a 5th. May I also remind you that just this year, my predecessor, Rita Isaac Diaye, has issued guidelines on the linguistic rights of language minorities. And the issue of education for minorities in their own language does figure rather prominently in that document. So I mention that because we have identified this as a priority. This is something that we will be addressing in a constructive dialogue, hopefully with many governments, and it is also an issue which will remain a priority and hopefully be clarified further even in the years to come during my mandate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, that intervention and response, and really very pleased to hear that the issue of education in one's mother tongue is going to be a key priority of your mandate, Special Rapporteur. Not sure if the other panelists wish to take on this question, but otherwise I'll come back hopefully to you later in the session with hopefully other questions we may get from the floor. And I would like to now call on the distinguished representative of South Africa to please take the floor.
Thank you. My delegation congratulates the chairperson on his appointment as chair of this important forum. Apartheid was the first phenomenon to be declared a crime against humanity in the post-war period. The racist regime that ruled South Africa for over 40 years rejected the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We cannot and may not ignore the history of our country. Our past has shaped our constitution, and if we want to move forward, we cannot deny that past. It is impossible to erase the legacy of 300 years of colonialism and apartheid in 2 decades. One of the fundamental challenges facing our government, elected in 1994, was the legacy of Bantu education, which crippled generations of Africans and denied them opportunities to fully enjoy their most basic human rights. Our Constitution and Constitutional Court are clear that it is the responsibility of the state to affirm those affected by the systemic racism of the past. This is in line with the special measures contained in the UN Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Therefore, affirmative action measures cannot be interpreted as discriminatory. It is a reprehensible distortion of historical and current realities to view affirmative action as discrimination against formerly advantaged sectors of the population. Section 29 of the South African Constitution provides for the right to education. Since 1994, our government has tirelessly pursued transformation measures in all aspects of education. In fact, 2/3 of government spending is dedicated to functions that seek to give effect to constitutionally mandated social rights. Chairperson, our government has embarked on an extensive review of the manner in which it provides funding to students at our tertiary institutions. On the 30th of August this year, the Commission of Inquiry delivered its report, and it proposes, among others, that all students at our universities and colleges be funded through a new cost-sharing model of income contingency loans. It also proposes a new fee capping mechanism. The report is currently being processed by the relevant ministries. Further, a number of youth development programs are in place, providing a wide range of services, opportunities and support to young people and their families. Chairperson, over the years we have found that this forum has been misused to promote sectarian agendas. Such organizations would be well advised to rather focus on reparations to victims of apartheid and not on undermining government's important efforts to address challenges of discrimination that are still rife in our society. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of South Africa and now call on the Guedes Instituto de la Mujer Negra from Brazil to please take the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to in this conference. I'm Rodney Jericho from Brazil, and I work on an NGO based in São Paulo called Geledes Black Women Institute. And now I will speak in Spanish. It's easier for me. Bueno, hablando de las buenas prácticas de mi país.
Now, in terms of good practices in my country, it is important to highlight that the Brazilian government recognizes the need to implement a program setting up positive measures, not only in the education system but also in others. Because this is a real struggle for the Brazilian people of African descent. Another good policy that the government has undertaken is to adopt a law, 10,599, which deals specifically with cultural aspects of Afro-Brazilian culture. It is, however, necessary for the Brazilian state to pay particular attention in much more detail to these issues. Firstly, because positive measures have been undertaken. We can see that the Afro-Brazilian population remains excluded from universities, federal universities that is, specifically because there is no more efficient oversight system at the state level. This law also stipulates that the state should set up an oversight system for this. Thus, we should ensure that this law be implemented in line with the conditions under which it was adopted. Finally, I would like to clarify that we have provided a lot of information on different aspects of the Afro-Brazilian population on our website. Thank you very much.
Sorry. I'd like to thank the representative for his statement and would like to now provide the floor to the European Centre for Democracy Development from Latvia. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, our organization oversees the rights of minorities in Europe, and I'd like to draw your attention to the dangerous precedent in Ukraine, and has been discussed in Latvia also. This is the removal of teaching in national minority languages in schools. The Ukrainian adopted a law to eradicate national minority schools completely. Latvian governments would like to give the opportunity to further study this, and higher education in these countries for national minorities does not exist at all. I would like to say immediately that priority studies in this area have not been undertaken. Reform has been taken to general education for ethnic minorities, because today children in bilingual schools need to use tutors to help them study subjects in their mother tongue. Further, this will lead to a fall in competitiveness in the job market, and a catastrophic consequence will be mass dismissal of teachers in national minority languages because their state language isn't up to scratch. The parents and children should have a right to choose which language they study in, and without any consultation, they are currently not consulted and their views are not sought. This is the main problem. People do not want to hear from these people, even though demonstrations were held by parents on this topic. Currently, Latvian children should have every opportunity to enjoy benefits provided under international conventions and treaties. Unfortunately, the international community is not paying attention to this and is even providing support. Representatives of national minorities have the view that there is discrimination against these minorities. There is high levels of tension in society, which again is dividing society on ethnic basis. I would like to invite you to create a working group, Chairman, on issues of educational reform with all stakeholders in all countries, including parents, governmental representatives, and also civil society. And this is the main problem. This is not currently studied. We should impose a moratorium currently on any changes to educational law, and have independent expert studies undertaken under the aegis of the United Nations. Only through joint dialogue and compromise will we be able to have a positive impetus on this to foster education for children. We will continue this discussion into the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the statement and for the concrete recommendations. Would like to call on all the speakers, given the long list that have indicated interest to speak, to please keep to your time. And would like to now call on Ms. Anastasia Crickley of the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination to please take the floor.
Thank you very much. I welcome this opportunity to welcome this forum and to participate with you this morning on behalf of the Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Inclusive education for the committee is a very important tool in addressing racial discrimination, one very important tool. We believe it's essential, and it's mentioned in virtually every single one of the concluding observations we make to states that come before us. Inclusive education for us means being inclusive in all dimensions. First and foremost, inclusive and equal access for all young women, all young men and all older women and men who are part of any society, for people who are part of any minority that is part of that society. Secondly, it means a curriculum that's inclusive and which respects and acknowledges the contribution of minorities to the societies of which they are part. And thirdly, it means that that curriculum is delivered by people who are representative of the diversity that's part of any society. We believe that these elements are essential. Otherwise, you are talking about delivering inclusive education for and not with the people who are part of a society. We acknowledge that inclusive education is absolutely essential for strong and positive self-identities for young people from minorities. And we believe that the educational spaces and resources, the special measures referred to by South Africa, are essential in order to create the conditions for that. I thank you very much and wish you well with your discussions.
I thank Ms. Anastasia Crickley for being very clear and very short. Thank you for the statement. Going to the list now, I would like to invite the Association Culturel Kurd from Syria to please take the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yala Saadi, Syrian of Assyrian descent. As a result of more than 50 years of exclusionary educational curriculum in Syria, a whole generation of youth has been feeling cultural marginalization and deprivation. The Syrian government, by not recognizing the existence nor the rights of indigenous people in the Syrian constitution, imposed Arabization and ethnic assimilation policies into its minorities, of which the most dangerous was the policy of assimilation in education. Today, at the same time, in the province of Al-Hasaki, we face other ideological education curriculum imposed by the de facto administration of DC called Democratic Self-Administration, led by the Democratic Union Party, known as the Kurdish PYD. This exclusionary curriculum imposed in 2015 segregates the students since first grade based on their ethnic background in separate classrooms, claiming to teach the curriculum to each group in their own respective languages. This is contrary to the original desires of parents to teach children their mother tongue in schools in an inclusive way. This specific policy creates dangerous ethnic division in the youth and contradicts the 1960 UNESCO Convention, which protects against discrimination in education. Therefore, building on the recommendation of the Forum of Minority Issues of 2008, we recommend UNESCO to strengthen its supervision on the education systems in Syria in order to eliminate the politicized and ideological education curricula. Second, recognize the Assyrian people as indigenous people in Syria alongside the other diverse ethnic and religious groups in the constitution and in educational curriculums. Third, adding mandatory courses in human rights to promote equality and tolerance. Fourth, stop all the procedures done by the de facto administration that aim to divide students from their colleagues. 5, allow youth to form students' clubs in their schools to celebrate and revival their own cultures without fear of punishment. We, the Assyrian youth of Syria, are hopeful to adopt the UN Measure 2250 in Syria under the UN supervision. to activate the role of Syrian youth in achieving complete social justice in our country and promote the peace-making efforts. Thanks to Syrian Universal Alliance for giving us a chance to make our voices heard. Daudi Sagi, thank you.
Thank you for the statement. And now the floor will be given to the Permanent Mission of Ukraine. Distinguished representative, the floor is yours.
Distinguished panelists, Ukraine continues comprehensive reforms with active engagement of state stakeholders and civil society, including minorities. The reform of Ukraine's education system is an important part of this process. Most recently, the Parliament of Ukraine adopted the law on education, one particular article of which raised concerns of some states. While elaborating the new law, the authorities and lawmakers have taken into account all Ukraine's international obligations and commitments under respective international instruments in the framework of the UN, UNESCO and the Council of Europe. These instruments underline that the right to maintain the collective identity through the minority language must be balanced by the responsibility to integrate and participate in the wider national society that requires the acquisition of the sound knowledge of both the society and the state language. The Article 7 of the law stipulates that the language of the educational process in Ukraine is the official language of the state. The very same article guarantees the right on education in municipal educational institution of preschool and primary education in the language of the national minority they belong to and the official language of the state. At the secondary level of education, persons belonging to national minorities, in accordance with the paragraph 4 of Article 7 of the law, will have opportunity to study in their native language. It should be emphasized that the transitional period of the application of the Article 7 is envisaged. All those representatives of minorities who started their education before September 2018 will continue studying under the currently existing conditions, and the new requirements will only be applicable starting from 2020. Ukraine has submitted the law on education to Venice Commission for its expert opinion on the language of education. The opinion is expected this December. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Ukraine, and we'll now move to the very last speakers of the session. I apologize for the fact that we are unable to accommodate the large number of participants that have asked for the floor. And already wish to recommend that you consider the next sessions over the remainder of today and tomorrow as an opportunity to make your statements, as well as to suggest that you may want to share your statements in writing so they can be featured on the online platform. I would now like to call on the Association for External Exchanges from China to take the floor, please.
I'm really honored to be the last speaker for this morning. Thank you, moderator, and the President for the opportunity. The forum has given us a very good platform to allow the organizations and individuals from different countries to conduct equal, fair discussions. But I still find there are things regrettable, because I find people who speak here must respect the facts. I heard a statement on China forbidding using the minority language for education. This is something I cannot agree. As a member of association, my observation and our research have come to different conclusions. Let me give you one example. In Tibet, in China's Shanghai region in Tibet, there is a Puma Jiangtang primary school, which has 108 students. Most of them are Tibetan. They have 9 teachers. Teaching is done in 2 languages, bilingually. The weekly curriculum accounts for over 50% of the classes. In the examinations, the students can use both Chinese or Mandarin or Tibetan. The use and protection of the minorities' language is a right which must be honored. As for to learn the language universally used in the country, does not conflict with this at all. This is a way for the minority nationalities to integrate into the society, to create opportunities for them. None of the minority nationalities in any country cannot develop in an isolated environment. To promote bilingual education will help the cultural heritage of a minority nationality and allow the children of a minority nationality to have a broader view of the world and life. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for the statement. And now the very last speaker from the floor for this session. I invite the youth of European nationalities to please make their statement.
Yes, thank you. I am Zekel from the Youth of European Nationalities. We are an umbrella organization of 37 ethnic minorities in Europe. Education as a human and individual main right is the main instrument for the minorities to gain the means to fully participate in the society. For minorities, language is a fundamental part of their identity. So learning their mother tongue is vital to preserving the identity. For more inclusive education, we want to emphasize that to achieve equality between minority and majority people through the education system, it is necessary for all the states to make all the necessary measures for an equal, accessible, attainable and reasonable education system. According to the needs of every minority, their language should be the language of instruction in preschool and elementary school, while the majority language would be taught as a subject, while also be represented as a substantial part in secondary school. We believe that including minority studies as a subject in the education system and improving the teachers' education regarding minorities will directly impact a more inclusive society. And last but not least, we would also mention that the non-formal education and expertise of the NGOs should be better recognized as an important tool for learning. Having a holistic organization of formal and non-formal education will better reflect our changes in society in the education system and moreover promote active participation and inclusive societies. Thank you.
I thank you very much for that last statement, and I wish to thank all the participants in the room and our excellent expert panel as the Special Rapporteur and the Chair for this first thematic session of the forum. We had a very rich discussion. Stakeholders, including member states, NGOs, civil society, youth activists, you all shared your rich experiences and good practices, as well as pointed to the challenges that remain with regards to addressing the barriers that young people of minority backgrounds face in accessing education and in terms of the inclusiveness of education systems. I unfortunately will be unable to summarize the richness of this discussion, but I think you will hopefully see it reflected in the report once it comes out. I would like to very much once more...
Please remain silent. Please remain silent. Let the moderator continue her closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I would like to invite the panelists and also call on the Special Rapporteur to please, in one sentence, share your main takeaway from this first discussion of the forum, and then I would like to, of course, hand it back to our excellent Chairman to close the session. Ms. Green, can we start perhaps with you and then go through the panelists?
Thank you. I would just like to thank all of those who've taken part for their comments and statements. And I do certainly agree that teaching needs to be imparted in one's mother tongue. That's very important for education. I would also like to thank those who have organized this forum, which has provided us with an excellent opportunity to express our views and also to make recommendations. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your statement. And I introduced the great efforts made by Korean minority youth in Japan today. And I strongly believe that the mutual understanding among minority youth and majority youth can be the most powerful key to create the brighter future for minority. Thank you very much.
By concluding, I would like to underline the importance of acknowledgement of the nature of minority education and its very close connection to proper understanding and application of human rights and the rights of national minorities.
I will just conclude by saying that I fully agree with all the panelists, but I would also say that the issue of education for young people, including in minorities, is of paramount importance, while also acknowledging and respecting their identity, including the linguistic issue and the use of language as a means of education, while also learning at the same time the official language of the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this statement and the dynamic exchange of views and interactive discussion from the floor, I would like to thank you all participants for the first morning session. I would like also to extend my thanks to the moderator, to the panelists, and to the special rapporteur for this dynamic exchange. And before I declare the morning session closed, I would like to inform you that the permanent mission of Romania is kindly inviting you to a reception and art exhibition at 1:30 today in room 20. So you are all invited. With that announcement, I declare the morning session closed. We will reconvene at 3 o'clock sharp. Thank you very much.